There was one money move I made after 65, and it is the reason I am comfortable today instead of afraid. One move, not a dozen clever tricks, not a windfall, not luck. One quiet decision that almost nobody talks about, made at an age when the whole world had already written me off. And I want to give it to you today, plainly, the way I wish someone had given it to me. But I am not going to hand it to you in the first 30 seconds, and I will tell you exactly why. If I say it too soon, you will do what I did for most of my life. You will hear how small and how quiet it is, and you will decide it is not powerful enough to matter for someone your age. So let me earn it first. Let me show you the woman I was before, so that when I give you the move, you understand why it changed everything. Stay with me a little while. Not for any algorithm. I am far too old to care about that word. Stay the way you would sit with a woman at her kitchen table who found something late and does not want you to miss it. And if you are past 60 and quietly afraid it is too late for you now, put one word in the comments. I would like to see how many of us are carrying that same fear, because I promise you it is a lie and I can prove it. Let me tell you who I was. For most of my life I did money the way almost everyone I knew did it. Whatever came in went out. I paid what had to be paid, I bought what had to be bought, and if anything was left, and usually there was not, it sat in a plain account doing absolutely nothing, which felt to me like being responsible. I thought that was what careful people did. Hold on tight, spend a little less, hope it lasts. And it did not last, not the way I needed it to. Because holding money still is not the same as building it. Every year the prices crept up, and my little pile bought a little less. And I told myself that was just how it was for people like me. I was not reckless. I was not lazy. I was careful in every way a person can be careful. And I still arrived at 65 with almost nothing, and a quiet certainty that the story was more or less over. That certainty is the real thing I need you to hear about, because it is the thing that costs the most, and it costs you silently. By 65, I had simply decided, without ever saying it out loud, that whatever chance I might have had was behind me, that building anything was a young person's game, and I had missed my turn. I did not rage about it. I just accepted it, the way you accept the weather, and I lived every day as though it were true. I want to describe those years honestly, because I think a great many of you are living inside them right now without a name for it. They were not dramatic years. Nothing collapsed. I was not out on the street. I got up, I managed, I made the money stretch, and from the outside it all looked perfectly responsible. That is the cruelty of it. A wasted decade does not announce itself. There is no alarm that rings to tell you that another 12 months just went by, with your money sitting perfectly still, earning nothing, quietly shrinking against the rising cost of everything. Each year feels ordinary. It is only when you finally add them all up that you see the shape of what you did. 10 or 15 years spent standing in place and calling it safety. And underneath it all was that one belief, running everything like a hand on a dial I could not see. The belief that it was too late. I never argued with it because I never noticed it. That is how the most expensive beliefs work. They do not shout. They just quietly decide your life for you while you think you are being sensible. Let me step out of the story for a moment, because this next part matters more than any number. If you are past 60 or past 70 and some quiet voice in you has already filed you under too late, I know that voice from the inside, and I need to tell you it is not the voice of wisdom. It sounds like wisdom. It sounds like being realistic, like knowing your limits, like not being a foolish old woman chasing something. But it is not wisdom. It is the single most expensive belief I ever held, and it very nearly cost me the best years I have left. I want to take it away from you before it takes anything more from you. Now let me tell you the move. After 65, I stopped keeping my money still, and I started letting it grow. That is the entire thing. I know how small it sounds. I told you it would. But those are two completely different lives, and everything I have now lives in the space between them. Let me tell you exactly what that meant, because the details are where an idea becomes a life instead of a nice thought. I took whatever I could set aside, and at the start it was so little I was embarrassed by it, and I stopped letting it sit in a place where it did nothing but slowly lose ground. I moved it somewhere it could actually grow, and then, and this was the hardest part, I left it alone. I did not touch it. I did not pull it back out the first time I got frightened, and a frightened woman gets frightened often. The whole discipline was 2 sentences long. Put it where it grows, and then keep your hands off it. That is it. Before I could even do that, though, there was one thing I had to fix first, and I will not pretend there wasn't. I had small leaks, money going out the door every month to things that quietly charged me, an interest here, a fee there, a little debt sitting in the dark and growing while I slept. Those were dollars working against me instead of for me, and you cannot fill a bucket while it is leaking. So the very first thing I did was plug the holes, one at a time, unglamorous as it was. It freed up almost nothing at first, but almost nothing put in the right place and left alone is exactly where this whole story starts. And I want to be honest about how it felt, because nobody warns you. Setting aside that first small piece, at my age, felt foolish. It felt too late to matter. Every instinct I had said a woman of 65 should be clutching her money tighter, not sending it off to do something she did not fully understand. I did it anyway, precisely because "it is too late to bother" was the exact voice that had already cost me 20 years. For once, I did the opposite of what the fear told me. That, more than any technique, was the move. And here is why that one quiet move does what a lifetime of careful holding never could. Money that is left alone to grow does not add a little each year. It multiplies. The small amount it earns starts earning too, and then what that earns as well. And the whole thing begins to build on itself, faster and faster, while you sleep, while you cook, while you do absolutely nothing at all. It is a snowball, and the strange, wonderful truth about a snowball is that the biggest part of its growth comes near the end, not the beginning. Most of what I have was built in the last stretch, not the first. That is exactly why starting late still works. The engine does not care how old you are when you finally switch it on. It only cares that you switch it on and then do not switch it back off. And that is the trap almost everyone falls into, and the one I want to save you from. It is not starting late that ruins people. It is starting and then stopping too soon, quitting in the early stretch when it looks like nothing is happening, right before the snowball gets heavy enough to move on its own. I nearly did that myself. For the first long while, it looked like nothing. I had to hold my nerve and trust the engine I could not yet see working. And then it turned a corner, quietly, and I understood for the first time what wealthy people had always known and never bothered to tell the rest of us. And I want you to sit with the other side of that snowball for a moment, because it is exactly what was happening to me during all those still years, and it may be happening to you right now. The same force that builds money up when it grows also grinds it down when it sits idle. A pile of money that is not growing is not staying the same. It is quietly melting, buying less and less each year, while you feel responsible for guarding it. So the choice was never really between risk and safety, the way I had framed it my whole life. It was between a snowball rolling and building and a snowball melting in the sun. Every one of those careful, still years, I had chosen the melting one and called it the safe choice. Understanding that finally was the thing that made me brave. The wealthy are not wealthy because they earned some fortune the rest of us never saw. Most of them simply started this engine early and refused to switch it off, and then let time do the work that no amount of effort ever could. That is the secret, and it is barely a secret at all. The only reason it stays hidden is that it is too quiet and too slow to make an exciting story, and too simple for anyone to believe it could work for a woman my age. There was a woman I knew, I will only call her Frances. Frances did not earn more than me, and she was not cleverer than me. But Frances made this one move at 55, and I did not make it until after 65. 10 years. That was the whole difference between us, and by the end those 10 years had built her a quiet security that everyone assumed came from luck or some inheritance nobody could name. It was neither. It was one ordinary move made 10 years sooner. I used to think Frances was lucky. I understand now she was simply not afraid to begin. And I was. I remember the exact evening it all became real to me, and I will tell you about it, because it is the closest I have come to grief and relief in the same breath. I was at my table with the papers I had spent years avoiding, and I finally let myself do the arithmetic I had been too frightened to do. Not what I had lost, but what I could have had if I had made this one move at 55 like Frances, instead of after 65. The number was so large it took the wind out of me. I sat there and I mourned it honestly. And then something turned, right there at the table. I thought, if 10 wasted years cost me a number that large, then every year is worth an enormous amount, which means the years I have left are worth an enormous amount too. The very math that broke my heart was the math that saved me. If time is that valuable, then the worst thing I could possibly do is waste one more day of it grieving the years already gone. So I dried my face and I started that week. Not the next month, that week. I have to confess something because I will not sit here and pretend I was only ever a victim of bad advice. When the younger women in my family came to me tired and stretched and asked me what to do, for years I told them exactly the wrong thing. I told them to be careful, to cut back, to hold on tight. I passed down the very fear that had frozen me, and I called it wisdom because it was all I had. I did not tell them to make their money grow because some broken part of me did not believe a woman like us was allowed to. Saying this to you now is part of how I make that right. There is a word for what that one move gave me, and it is not wealthy, though that word turned out to be true. The word is proof. Proof that the ending I had accepted at 65 was not the ending. It was only the place I had stopped looking. Proof that late is not the same as never. For a woman who spent years certain her chances were behind her, that proof is worth even more than the comfort, and the comfort is worth a great deal. There is one more thing I need to say, and I need to say it to you directly, because I think it is the reason you are still here, listening to an old woman at her kitchen table. If you grew up being told that money was for other people, that wealth belonged to the lucky, the educated, the ones who started young, and never to someone like you, then you have been carrying a weight that was never yours to carry, and it has cost you more than any bad year ever did. I carried it for most of my life. I want you to set it down tonight. Not because I am going to sell you anything, because I am not. Only because I sat exactly where you are sitting, certain and afraid and out of time, and I was wrong, and I would give a great deal to have someone reach back and tell me so before I lost those years. So let me be the one to reach back to you. So let me speak to you as plainly as I know how. You have not run out of time. You feel as though you have, the way I felt as though I had, and you are wrong the same way I was wrong. The one move does not check your age before it begins to work. It does not care that you are 60 or 70 or older. It only asks that you stop holding still and start letting your money grow. This week, not next year, because next year is the exact lie that costs people the most. Set aside whatever piece you can, however small it shames you to admit. Plug the small leaks that drain you in the dark. Put what remains where it grows. Leave it alone, and give the snowball the one thing it truly needs, which is not a fortune and not cleverness, but simply time and your refusal to quit. I cannot give you back the years I spent holding still, and I cannot give you back yours. That is the one thing gone for good, and I will not insult you by pretending otherwise. But everything after this moment is still unspent. I was past 65 with almost nothing, certain it was over, and it was not over. It was the one beginning I had been too afraid to start. And here is the part I hold on to most, on the days I am tempted to grieve the years I lost. The best time to have made this move was decades ago. I know that. But the second best time, the only time any of us ever actually has, is now, tonight. Whatever your age, whatever your number, however small the piece you can set aside. The woman who plants the tree late still sits in its shade. She just has to plant it and then have the patience to let it grow and the courage not to dig it back up every time she is afraid. Do not spend another year being certain it is too late. Make the one quiet move this week and let it grow. And I promise you that a few years from now, you will not recognize the frightened woman who was so sure her best days were behind her. And that, after all of it, is the only thing I know for certain.